Welcome back to my channel. Today's video shifts gears from my recent content. Lately, I focus on small-scale solutions, pointing out illogical arguments and hypocrisy rather than tackling major fixes. My goal has been to promote rational, honest thinking as a foundation for better solutions, even if perfect answers don't exist. This video dives into a highly emotional topic, one that pretty much guarantees irrational arguments I'll need to deal with: abortion. While you may get a sense of my stance on abortion, my focus here isn't my position. Instead, I'll highlight absurd arguments and tactics used in the debate. It's actually the very first issue I got into on an internet discussion forum decades ago. I immediately got the troll treatment where my arguments were ignored as I was just subjected to personal attacks. It didn't matter how hard I tried. After 2 years of that treatment, I changed my tactics and started doing what I still do today. I turned their attacks against them. By pointing out how they dodged my arguments and resorted to name-calling, I used their behavior as evidence of their weak position. The more they attacked, the more they proved my point. They hated it. One very active pro-choice forum member who worked at an abortion clinic even said to me, "I don't understand why you are still here when I could drive everyone else away." I never forgot that and refused to let anyone's attacks drive me away. Eventually, their only weapon is censorship, like when a weak YouTuber used fake copyright strikes against me. Beyond personal attacks, other tactics are common in abortion debates. The pro-life side often labels opponents as pro-abortion or anti-life, while the pro-choice side calls their opponents anti-choice or anti-woman. These are deliberate attempts to vilify the other side, and the pro-choice side complained about it all the time. To foster real discussion, I suggested both sides use the term the opposition prefers: pro-life and pro-choice. It seemed like a fair solution that gave the pro-choice side what they claimed to want. But it didn't work. The pro-choice side insisted on being called pro-choice, but refused to stop using negative labels for their opponents. That showed me they weren't interested in honest debate. Now, let's examine common pro-choice arguments used for over 50 years. First was the claim that the unborn baby is just a clump of cells, not even alive. Well, a single cell can be alive, and dividing and multiplying cells certainly are. It's a key trait of life. Life does not come from inanimate objects. By the way, you are a clump of cells too. What are you going to say? That your cells are differentiated into various organs, etc.? Well, that is the case with the fetus as well. Or they'll say the fetus is still developing, but so is a newborn. In fact, people are still developing for many years after being born. A variation of these unscientific arguments is to say the fetus is just part of a woman's body, like a fingernail. But that simply isn't true either, because the baby's DNA is unique, unlike actual body parts. Thus, the "I have a right to decide about my body" oversimplifies things, since two bodies are involved. A fetus is not only living cells, it is an organism, which means an individual life form. A fingernail is not. Even an entire leg isn't an organism. Yes, the baby is attached to the mother, and that brings up issues that should be discussed. But being attached is not the same thing as being part of her. Why do they use such terms, as well as ones like fetus? Because they strip away the humanity of the unborn. A human embryo or fetus is unique human life, not destined to become another species. Fun fact, fetus is Latin for offspring, but most people don't know that, so it still serves to dehumanize. Let's watch some clips on this subject.
When they talked about a baby's heartbeat, they would say fetal cardiac activity. They might say embryonic pulsing. So they would rather promote abortion and use euphemisms to hide what they're talking about.
Why use such terms to the general public? Well, there is this.
And so I'd read these stories and I'd think, oh, are you using euphemisms on purpose?
Dehumanization has a long, dark history. Nazis called Jews vermin and likened them to rats, and even used methodical steps to involve doctors in their atrocities. In the US, slaves were deemed inferior humans, and Native Americans were labeled savages. Dehumanizing those in the way of one's goals has a terrible track record, making it easier to justify or excuse killing people. Now, some on the pro-choice side will argue the baby is a human being, but not yet a person, at least in the legal sense. Okay, there's at least room for argument there, but I see that from very few on the pro-choice side. Another claim is that the unborn isn't a person because it can't survive on its own. Neither can a newborn. It needs help for years. The counter that a born baby can be cared for by others is valid, but needing help clearly can't determine personhood. Then there's the use of hard cases like rape or maternal health to justify all abortions. Forcing a woman to carry a baby from rape is a legitimate pro-choice argument, and health concerns are reasonable too, but these represent a very tiny portion of abortions. If you agree to allow abortions in those cases with restrictions elsewhere, the pro-choice side typically rejects it. They want abortion on demand for any reason. Also, decades ago, abortions said they would always claim there were health risks regardless of the truth. The pro-choice side's honesty record is shaky. Dr. Bernard Nathanson, the National Association for Repeal of Abortion Laws co-founder, also known as NARAL, later opposed abortion after ultrasound technology revealed more about the fetus. He admitted they fabricated scary stories and fake polls, which the media accepted without question. I also remember the issue of late-term abortion, where the baby is almost completely delivered with all but the head pulled out, and then the baby is killed. Over and over again, we were told that was extremely rare and only for health reasons. So few, in fact, that you could count the number of times on one or two hands. Sounds convincing. After all, news media sources kept saying it. Surely we can trust them. Except it turned out that in just one state, there were over 600 of these each year. Oh, wait, that was in just one hospital, and not for health reasons. That's actually one of the scary things, because I suspect that most of those news people actually believe what they said, but clearly they were just repeating what they heard without questioning it. One more thing. Remember that woman I was trying to debate who worked in an abortion clinic? Well, a pro-lifer asked her if she didn't want to raise a baby, why not just put it up for adoption? After all, there are long waiting lists to adopt. Her answer was startling. If I put my baby up for adoption, it might be adopted by an abusive family, and that would worry me for the rest of my life. Think about that. In fear that a family might be abusive, in spite of all the screening that is done before an adoption is allowed, she would rather terminate the baby's life to remove her worries. That strikes me as twisted logic. Anyway, my point is that the pro-choice side needs to stop making totally bogus, unscientific arguments and focus on those arguments that have merit. Unfortunately, word games are used everywhere to mislead the general public. Here's a final clip summing up the wordplay madness.
Just a reminder that the people telling you men can't have an opinion on abortion are also telling you that men can get pregnant. And they're also fighting for women's rights but can't tell you what a woman is. So if you're ever having...
Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.